Today I want to talk about whether ordinary people are virtuous. By ordinary, I mean people like you and me, people in your class or neighborhood, or the people who participate in empirical studies. When psychologists ask this question, they usually focus on easily identifiable virtuous behavior and set up an experiment to see whether people act in that way in the situations the experimenters create. Some studies seem to indicate that most people are not consistently honest in their behavior, but they're not consistently dishonest either. They are honest in some situations and dishonest in others. For instance, in a classic study by Hartshorn and May in 1928, children were put in a variety of situations in which they could lie or cheat or steal without being caught. What the researchers found was that there was little correlation between the honesty of children across these different situations. Very few were consistently honest or consistently dishonest. Other studies have been done with adults and with some other traits. In a study done in 1980 by Lynn and Eisen, some subjects found a dime in a phone booth and some did not. When they emerged from the booth, a confederate of the experimenters walked by and dropped a pile of papers in front of them. Most of the subjects who found the dime stopped to help pick up the papers. Most of the subjects who did not find the dime did not stop. The conclusion some people drew from this experiment is that a person's mood is a better predictor of helping behavior than the trait of kindness. This was used to support a view called Situationism. In its extreme form, philosophers Gilbert Harman and John Doris argued that studies like these show that virtues are either non-existent or very rare. But if they are so rare, why do we talk about them? Why have a theory of virtue if so few people have virtue? There are lots of different reactions to these studies, as you might expect. Some people criticize the construction or interpretation of the experiment itself. For instance, repetitions of the dime experiment did not give the same result, showing no connection between finding money and helping a person who dropped papers. Other critics of situationism argue that people's behavior is much more consistent than it appears, when consistency is judged as the situations are perceived by the people in the situation, rather than by the people designing the experiment. It seems to me that the degree of behavioral consistency depends a lot on the particular virtue or vice we're talking about. Very few traits have been studied. What if we studied the virtue of punctuality and its opposite? Are there people who are consistently on time or consistently late? Are there people who consistently overspend or consistently hoard their money? What about open-mindedness and closed-mindedness? It would be interesting to find out if people can have a habit of considering the viewpoints of others and act that way about many different subjects. I suspect that there is a lot of behavioral consistency in these traits. But honesty is an interesting virtue because it covers a lot of different behaviors with perhaps different motives. Compare the feeling that motivates you to tell the truth to someone asking you directions to the library with the motive not to cheat on your income tax and the motive not to steal somebody's iPad. The emotions and attitudes that give rise to honest behavior may be different in each case. And if so, maybe we should conclude that these are three different virtues. That would be an interesting outcome. The virtues of benevolence are another interesting kind of virtue because generosity, compassion, and kindness require an emotional disposition that may be hard to maintain continuously. It's not surprising that people are more inclined to act kindly when they're in a good mood. But we know that some people behave consistently whether or not they're in a good mood. Think of the people who spend years of their lives working as aid workers or missionaries. The volunteers in large communities all over the world live with the mentally disabled, caring for them as family. Their first-hand reports reveal people who are often tired and discouraged and struggling to deal with their own problems. But they continue to love and care for the disabled men in their care. But of course, these people are exceptional. Does it matter if only a few people are virtuous? The philosopher Dan Russell argues that the studies cited by the Situationists are completely consistent with Aristotelian virtue ethics because virtue is a model concept, the concept of a kind of ideal that we aim for, and it is not surprising that few people are ideal. That does not mean it is not useful to talk about the ideal. I agree with Russell. It's the same with any excellence, like terrific cooking. Very few cooks are consistently great cooks. Maybe they're much better when they're cooking for other people than for themselves, or vice versa. Or maybe they do not cook well when they're in a bad mood. But that does not mean there's no such thing as a good cook. The really superb cooks are exemplars for the rest of us. It does not take very many exemplars to inspire us to become better, even if we never get very close to their level of excellence. How good are we at judging the virtue or vice of other people? Some studies indicate that we're not very good at it at all. If you drop your papers and someone walks by without helping you pick them up, it's tempting to say that that's an inconsiderate person. If someone sees you drop a $20 bill and gives it to you, it's tempting to say that that's an honest person. But that person might be dishonest in other situations. And the person who did not help you when you dropped a bunch of papers might be very helpful to someone else the next day. We overgeneralize people's character traits the same way we overgeneralize lots of things. I go to a supermarket and am annoyed that their mushrooms are not good, and then I tell my friends that the store has bad produce. My friend is delighted that she got her favorite cereal at a low price at another store and tells me that that store has low prices. We need to have a more sophisticated way to identify and measure virtue, especially if we're going to start programs like the new institute at OU that aims to foster virtues in our university community and to take a leadership role in research on virtue. In the next lecture, I'll talk about different methods for measuring virtue.